So you're about to see me start the fantasy news by covering the massive publishing heist that Meta just pulled off. And I hadn't checked if they stole my books when I recorded that section because I wanted to kind of just remain emotionally out of it and just cover the story for what it was. And then I checked, and it turns out Meta stole all 3 of my books to train its AI. I didn't think it would bother me that much. I'm really mad. I just keep thinking of the hundreds of hours I put into those stories, but there's not a whole lot I can do on my own about this, right? I've been personally wronged by Mark Zuckerberg because, as I'm gonna say later on in the story, he apparently authorized this, and I just sit here and take it. That's it. Except not quite. Not only am I going to encourage everyone here who has published anything to go in the link in the description down below and check to see if Meta stole your work as well, but also just go check if they stole from your favorite authors, because I have. And it turns out they stole from Brandon Sanderson, they stole from Stephen King, they stole from Jay Kristoff, they stole from J.K. Rowling even. And I think fans should let authors know, hey, Meta stole your life's work. That's a big deal. I think it is my responsibility here on the platform to put a call to action out there to check out this specific archive and then let authors know if they have been stolen from. That's the little bit I can do. And I highly encourage everyone else to take part. Spread the word. Facebook stole over 7.5 million published books, indie and not, to train its AI. That's a crime. Let's get into it. Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. I'm your disheveled goblin host Daniel Greene, and today I am bringing you the heist news, except it's not a cool heist like someone having to blow open a vault and disable the lasers as the guy in the van hacks it, and instead, it's like a depressing, nerdy heist, but I'm gonna make it as fun and interesting as possible. But all of this is happening because we have finally gotten the details, the internal communications, in regards to Meta pirating books to train their AI model, Llama 3. And I'm about to criticize Meta a whole lot. So to be fair and keep things level, I am also going to give them one compliment. Llama 3, dope name for an AI. I enjoy that. Probably my favorite named AI so far. And it's also apt, I believe, because generative AI text models just spit facts at you without context, much like a llama.
He's gonna spit on you.
So good name, good quality name there. But let's go ahead and dive on into the details of just how horrible this situation looks. So it seems that Meta did attempt to go about this process the legal means first, right? They didn't want to pull off this heist, and according to their own internal communications, actually reached out to publishers to see what it would cost to gain access to their catalogs of material to train Llama 3. Except the price was apparently exorbitantly too high. Keep in mind, this is Meta, a company that throws around billions like it's nothing, but okay, and also would take an unreasonable amount of time. No, not years or months, 4+ weeks. And as someone who was a software engineer, all of this lines up with the culture I was very happy to leave behind doing this job instead. Now, if you're wondering why exactly Meta needed to do this in the first place, putting it in layman's terms, to make a competent generative AI, you need to train it on an amount of data that the human mind can't even comprehend. There is a reason we're going to be talking about the millions and tens of millions of pirated content. And the higher quality the content, the better for your possible AI. And with Meta kind of being late to the game with Llama 3 and needing to compete with the likes of OpenAI, this seemed to be their best route to putting something out that could actually garner attention in what's becoming a more and more crowded space, which is kind of give you an inkling of why 4+ weeks to them seemed just completely unacceptable. So instead, they turned to crime.
The secret ingredient is crime.
And please note that that senior manager at Meta referred to 4+ weeks as incredibly slow. And as someone who has had their life in both ponds here, I was an engineer, now I talk about books for a living, This is hilarious to me. This story is getting chocolate on my peanut butter. To overcome these unbelievable hurdles of having to pay or wait a little, Meta then turned to LibGen, which is one of the largest online piracy data sets for published material, containing over 7.5 million books and over 81 million research papers. And if you're thinking like any reasonable person would, why would they do that? Like, people, when I was growing up using LimeWire, would get like legal threats for downloading an album. This seems insane. They agree with you. In fact, internally, members of the team referred this as a medium-high legal risk and discussed various ways they could possibly hide the fact that this is where they were getting their data from, including removing data clearly marked as pirated/stolen, never externally cite the use of any trading data, including LibGen, and remove any line containing things like ISBN, copyright, and all rights reserved, as well as preventing it from doing things like just reproducing the first 3 pages of Harry Potter, which would prove that it's pulling from that book. My favorite line from all of this, though, comes from a director of engineering who noted specifically that if they licensed one book to train Llama 3, they then won't be able to lean on the fair use argument and the inevitable legal troubles this will bring. And I want to really stress that. This is a cost of doing business for Meta. And it wasn't like it was hidden from Mark Zuckerberg and it's just some rogue team. They even apparently ran this by Zuck and he approved it. Which brings me to their final discussed legal defense, which is that they aren't seeding this information for anyone else. They're just downloading it to use internally, and then their generative model will transform the text. Therefore, it's all fair use. To which, no. First of all, you didn't seed it to anybody else, so everyone who pirates anything from Meta from now on, as long as they don't seed it to anyone else, you're in the clear according to them, even if you're a big company. But also, I want to get to like a more of an opinion part of this that I just generally hate. Things like LibGen exist because I agree with what the author of this article, Alex Resner, says. Great article, by the way. There are issues within the publishing industry. The gatekeeping that still happens for just knowledge and information can become incredibly frustrating and slow down things that absolutely should not be hindered. Not exactly talking about a tech conglomerate like Meta trying to spit out an AI named Llama, but yeah, there are issues with publishing in general keeping up with the modern age. They are the Internet Explorer of the mega mediums, right? They just don't keep up with the cutting edge of stuff. That's a well-known fact. It's why things like LibGen exist. There is, on an individual level, still an issue with being able to access knowledge. But what Meta wants to provide you with is not knowledge. And instead, they want to create just another tool that spits out of context facts at you. Sure, you can try and engage with generative AI stuff like this and maybe get a deeper meaning, but a lot of the times it is wrong. And on top of that, let's be honest, that's not what most of us are going to end up using things like this for. Look at how Google is used to just quickly get something. That's fine, but I don't like how much these companies seem to be trying to angle these tools as a replacement or an aid to learning, because they do not let you or de-incentivize you from actually engaging with the material, trying to think critically about it, and instead just lazily hand you factoids or maybe a bit of information without the actual AI understanding anything beyond answering your simple question. Context and deeper understandings matter. It's why experts exist. PhDs and doctors. It is a fucking big deal to take a topic and get a thorough understanding of it. It just scares me, especially because these tech conglomerates, which we've seen not really care about laws and certainly not care about the ethics of something, are pushing more and more into our spaces to de-incentivize us as much as possible from really engaging with information. And I think Alex Resner really agrees with me because they close out this article beautifully, saying, one of the biggest questions of the digital age is how to manage the flow of knowledge and creative work in a way that benefits society the most. LibGen and other such pirated libraries make information more accessible, allowing people to read original work without paying for it. Yet generative AI companies such as Meta have gone a step further. Their goal is to absorb the work into profitable technology products that compete with the originals. Will these be better for society than the human dialogue they are already starting to replace? Perfectly put. Future Daniel here again to close out this piece by saying there is a lot you can do to counteract this on a personal and societal level. One, you can use AI for some stuff. That's okay. I do. Put a grocery list together with it. Or yeah, just little factoids you don't really need to have a deeper understanding of. Sure. But when it comes to critical things you want to learn or truly understand, engage with it. There's a reason I write in books that I read all over them and stuff like that, because it forces me to critically think beyond, further than the context of the AI only understanding the set of information needed to answer this question, probably not fully and maybe inaccurately. But on a societal level, spread the word. Message an author, tweet at them, let them know your book was stolen. Because of the rumblings I'm hearing since I've just been messaging authors about this today, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a class action lawsuit. And the more that know, the better. So now we're going to shift gears out of that societal existential dread and start talking about some book news. Yay! If you're a James Arlington fan, I am so excited to say that we have seen the release date for the second book in the Hierarchy series confirmed. The Strength of the Few is going to be released November 1st. And for those of you who aren't aware, The Will of the Many was probably in my top 2 favorite books of last year or the year before. Time means nothing anymore, and I highly recommend it, and I'm super excited for this second book. And whenever I do these release date or cover reveals, I always get people asking me to say more about the books, which, fair. The Will of the Many was genuinely one of my favorite books of the year it came out, if not the, and is based off a Roman-inspired imperial world where the main character is involved in this political espionage going on in a academia backdrop. It has some real brutal, interesting action, but also some like deep philosophical stuff going on as is there really even a good side is like one of the prominent questions that really drives you through all of the conflict. It's a lot better than James Arlington's first series, in my opinion, and I don't think that one was bad at all. So highly recommend you check this one out. And I'm on the cover quote for this one, though as much as I do like this cover for The Strength of the Few, that is clearly a sequel cover to this book, I hope they also put out a cover for the original cover, because I kind of prefer that minimal one. So it'd be cool if fans could get both. But I like both sets. And the implications of the greater cultural exploration that's going to be put into this world based off this cover has me really excited. But this takes us to a celebration of the first book in the Farseer trilogy, The Assassin's Apprentice, turning 30. Because Curious King Books has put out a sneak peek of some art that's going to be in their upcoming editions of said trilogy, with art by Lizin Yin, and is without question one of the most iconic scenes from the books, and I am now very excited to see this rendition of Robin Hobb's fantasy classic, one of the most must-read, character-driven, specifically fantasy epics in existence. And if you like Farseer, you will love the general Realm of the Elderlings material as well. I know some people say you can skip the Farseer trilogy and just go into her wider material. I still love Farseer, and I push people that way, but if it's not for you, don't give up on Robin Hobb. Give her other material a shot as well. But this takes us to my favorite kind of fantasy news, the fun fantasy news, with the release of some mythical stamps coming out March 27th in the UK. This series includes some classics from the culture, including Beowulf and Grendel, Bloody Wed, which is the Welsh goddess of flowers, the Loch Ness Monster, because how could you not? Finn MacCool, who is a legendary Irish warrior who created the Giant Causeway in North Ireland. A Selkie, which is a shapeshifter that can transform between human and seal by shedding its seal skin. Some Cornish pixies, which are some elf-like critters that roam the Cornish moorlands, as well as the Black Shuck and the Grindilo. And I, to be totally honest, have never really been interested in collecting stamps, except for the ones we cover here in Fantasy News that have been really fucking awesome when it comes to representing the fantasy genre. There's been like a few times this has occurred, and I've never actually followed through on getting any, and I always regret it once I'm reminded. Am I going to end up an old stamp collector? I might. Okay, let's accept that fact. And I really did not want to cover two negative big stories in this episode of Fantasy News, but both are big enough that they need to be covered, and I could not justify cutting either one. Let's get into it. The federal agency responsible for library and museum funding has gotten a visit from, you know them, you loathe them, DOGE. Awesome. Because President Trump has appointed Keith E. Sonderling as the new acting director of the Institute of Museum and Library Services. This is after President Trump signed an executive order asking for the elimination of the independent federal agency. What specifically, typically, this agency does fund is workforce training, support pilot programs, and bolstering basic library services. And last year awarded $266 million. And this is especially beneficial to rural locations where libraries are often severely underfunded. And of course, there's a whole lot of just nebulous, we aren't sure how big of an impact this is going to have, how much they'll follow through with trying to just eliminate this agency altogether. And I'm left wondering, why is this a better option than just taxing billionaires reasonably? That's what I'm left wondering. Oh, an agency dedicated to preserving our culture and increasing access to information and education? Nah, fuck that. God. But that's going to take us to just the wider entertainment news, which is going to begin with some news for the One Piece adaptation over at Netflix. And that is because one of the co-showrunners, Matt Owens, has exited the series for mental health concerns. Joe Traggs is going to remain the sole showrunner, and the exit of this co-showrunner is not expected to impact the show's season 3 renewal, which has already been confirmed. And there's some speculation about what exactly is going on with Owens. I'm not going to get into that.
That's disrespectful.
Though I will read his official statement posted to Instagram, which says, "For now, I'm going to take a breath, do some therapy, try and rank up in Marvel Rivals, and come back refreshed for the new adventures that await." And my only opinion here is I hope he's able to recover. The season 1 of One Piece that he was involved with was far exceeding, I think, nearly everyone's expectations for a live-action adaptation of the epic. And I hope if he's able to come back, the show will let him in the future. But this takes me to the news that, yes, Severance has been renewed for a season 3, and I have seen it. It is great. I do have like some minor criticisms of Severance as a whole, but let me know if you would like a full series review here on the channel for Apple TV Plus's recent mega hit. If you're unaware, it's a surreal, corporate, almost David Lynchian flavored sci-fi show starring Adam Scott, and I believe executive produced and directed by Ben Stiller. And in some quickie news, the recent video game hit Split Fiction has apparently sparked a bidding war between major studios over its film rights. And in the last piece of quickie news for the day, it seems the yet to even be released God of War adaptation happening over at Amazon has already been greenlit for a season 2. In an interview with Katie Sackhoff, the showrunner Ronald D. Moore said, "Right now I'm working on the adaptation of this video game called God of War that Amazon has ordered 2 seasons of, and they asked me to come in. I'm literally in the writer's room, and that's my new thing." But speaking of video games, we have also had an interesting report released in regards to the playing habits of gamers. Newzoo shared highlights from its 3rd annual gaming industry report, which includes data on consumer habits. The report notes that the majority of players continued to spend their time on older games last year, with a much smaller percentage of total playtime spent on games released in 2024. According to the report, last year, 67% of the total hours spent playing PC games was on games that are 6 years old or more. And I'm not surprised by this at all. Not only has there been a bit more of a recent contentious relationship between the player base and modern AAA releases especially, but on top of that, yes, for a long time, year after year, gaming was evolving and changing so much that if you played a game that was a few years out of date, it would feel a lot less polished, interesting, and new compared to what was just being put out. But if you compare a game released in 2025 to a game released 6 years ago, I don't think there's that big a difference. I mean, graphics have certainly been polished and gameplay can be a bit smoother, but beyond that, there also seems to be just less of an interest from people in general on what is the most shiny and pretty. And instead, it's about what's the most well-rounded story, the most immersive experience. And with the catalog of games going back being well beyond what anyone could play in one lifetime, It just doesn't feel necessary to spend $50, $60, $70, $80 on a brand new title, especially on PC, when you can get a game that has just as many play hours in it that you've never touched for $10, $5, depending on the sale that's going on Steam. This just makes complete sense to me, and I just read that and went, yep. But then for our trailer news for the week, we had a trailer teaser drop for the Toxic Avenger remake happening with Peter Dinklage attached, and I'm really unsure how to feel about it. It was a teaser and had the sense of humor I expected, but I'll need to see more before I have strong opinions either way. But after that was a trailer that really caught my eye, and I actually would like to push a lot of you towards because it seems to be rather unviewed in terms of what has been put on YouTube. And that would be the trailer for The Last Spark of Hope by Saban Films. It seems to me the premise is a mixture of The Martian and Scavenger's Reign in live action, following a survivor on a desolate planet with a robot companion. I do believe the trailer gives away possibly a little too much, depending on how long the story of the film is. And on top of that, one note to the people putting this on YouTube: if you put the description filled out, it'll perform better in the algorithm with keywords and stuff like that. It's pretty important if you want people to find your trailer, though I'll do my best. No guarantee of it being great, but a lot of these like smaller, lesser promoted sci-fi films are where I've found some of my favorites in the past, so check it on out. And then in the final story of the week, I am excited to say not only does it look like we are getting new Lord of the Rings Legos on the horizon, but also the largest franchise in the history of entertainment franchises will be partnering with LEGO again, and that will be Pokémon. Targeting a 2026 release date, the companies have not said a damn thing except that they are collaborating on some new sets, which begs the question, are you more excited to add Pokémon Legos to your collection, Lord of the Rings Legos to your collection, or do you touch grass regularly?
And today's Indie Pub promo is The New 10 Guardians of Draco by J.T. Petrie. On the planet of Draco, there exists an academy dedicated to training children into their teenage years to become Guardians of Draco. Yet despite the numerous children cadets trying their best to make it, only 10 are chosen from each generation. It's the final year of the cadets' training, and 100 cadets remain. Rex Hundider, Prince of Draco, is one of those cadets, and not even being the heir to the throne has a guaranteed spot among the coveted seats. With rivals, enemies, and friends around every corner, he has to try his best to make it to the very end. Check it out in the links down below.
Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.
And I'd like to give a special shout out to my latest high tier Patreon, John Rio.